everybody. Happy Monday, or happy whatever day it is that you're listening to this. I hope everyone is having a beautiful week. Thank you for joining us for another conversation of As It Goes. If you're new here, I'm Lydia, and we're all just figuring out as it goes, and conversations help us along the way. Today's conversation, I am joined by Duquette of Bloodroot Apothecary. We are talking all things plants and herbalism in this fertile conversation. See what I did there? Fertile plants. This is an incredibly expansive and enriching chat, so I will just let you get into it without further ado. It's so funny, like when we connected and I realized that you're on Maui. I'm currently trying to figure out where I'm moving to next. And so Hawaii has been, I think, on the forefront. And anything that gives me a sign that's like, Hawaii, I'm like, I see you, universe. I'll take it. I'm so curious. Like, tell me about Maui. Tell me about life there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was born and raised here on Maui, and my family's been here for a while, since the early 1800s. So, yeah, we've been here for a minute, and, I don't know, I am so in love with this place. It's amazing, and, but, a lot has changed with the pandemic, and it's just really interesting trying to navigate that. Like we've been seeing an influx of tourism and, an influx of just like new people coming in, and just, seeing the impacts on the land and also the people too.
Right.
It's been really interesting, and I don't know, a lot of changes for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, no matter what I've done to try to move somewhere else, I just can't seem to leave Maui. And so, eventually I'm just like, okay, whatever, I get it. Like, so, yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know, I feel like the island of Maui, like people who come here, whether they're conscious of it or not, they come to heal. And whatever way that shows up too. And it's definitely a place to facilitate that. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just so in love with this place.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Have you been to Hawaii?
I haven't. No.
Okay.
No. I have friends that have, and obviously speak, such incredible things about it. And there's a lot of people that I follow that are from Hawaii, native to Hawaii. And yeah, so I mean, also, do you feel like the influx, because I've heard about that, like the influx of tourism and everything, and obviously as someone who would even consider spending time there, I think it's so important to honor the land and honor the fact that I would be just a visitor. And I think that education aspect of it too is really important, at least to me, prior to going somewhere. And do you feel like there's consciousness in, the way visitors are like showing up there? Do you feel like for the most part what you've seen is just an influx and, that lack of respect and, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, like, thank you for being so mindful of, how you're approaching, this thought and this pull to Hawaii. Like, that in itself just means so much. As far as, just seeing the consciousness of the people coming in, the visitors, it's really interesting. I've been doing this little experiment lately. I feel like Hawaii has been open for a very long time, just like in terms of the pandemic and stuff. And it really blew our minds. We weren't ready for it, and, we're still processing a lot before the pandemic, like things that happened before it, things that happened during it. And since we had a glimpse of the way that things could possibly be during the pandemic. Just, the ease and the community and the wellness and being able to enjoy our island, that coupled in with the quickness of, authorities opening up Hawaii again for the tourist industry, like, our minds are kind of blown right now. And so, for me, it was navigating around that, because there was a time I was so frustrated and just like in such deep grief. Right. I'd be driving around, and I mean, I always try to stay centered from a place of compassion and understanding with anybody who comes and, come and hang, like, it's chill, like, it's great. Right. But I found myself just really focusing on really harmful things, and seeing a lot of things, that cause harm, and then that just kind of like, cycles in myself, and then just recreate, and if you just keep going with this. And so I was like, my heart can't handle this, first of all. I know that everyone else can't handle this, but what can I do? Like, I can't stop the planes. I can't, So I'm like, okay, how can I change this in myself? So I prayed and and started seeing, okay, people with stepping into consciousness, aware people, like visitors who are aware and are very careful with themselves, how they're walking in this place and how they interact with others. And I tell you what, like, my experience shifted instantly.
That's beautiful.
And so it's been a really big, lesson for me. Yeah. And, shifting what I want to see in myself and, others. I want to create that reality. And also, just in the context of what's going on, just how to not fix it, but, find the loopholes around all the things. So.
Right. Yeah. No, I can only imagine. It's so hard to, as I can imagine, feel helpless and also hurt by that. Yeah, but it's so beautiful that, you're able to do what you needed to do to honor how it was sitting within you, and that shift is, it's not necessary, but...
Yeah, and it's, it's not easy. I mean, it's, when you do it, it's one of the easier things to do instead of, like, ramming your head against the wall. And, you know what I mean? Right. And all of these just weird, yucky thoughts, but, it's like, okay, I just want to have fun and enjoy the place and see the beauty and everything, and everyone has the right to do that. Right. Experience the beauty in the place that you're at, and, offer gratitude and all that, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at the same time, I feel like it's important, especially from a visitor's perspective, to understand, again, the impact of our actions, because as I say all the time on the podcast, right, what we do and where our money goes is like a vote for or against something. And so, the more demand there is for plane tickets, the more demand there is for hotel rooms, for, real estate, luxury real estate, the more that has consequences for the people that actually live there and who actually call this place home. And that's, again, for me, I think such a valuable lesson for anyone in my sort of position, because we all have to consider that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that. And I mean, that's totally valid, and I hear you. And, what comes to mind is, like, there's a point where, okay, how am I perpetuating harm? How do I not? But also, how do I not drag myself in the dirt? Right, yeah. You know what I mean? I feel like, you could do a lot with what's your intention behind all this? Like, are you mindful of how you are, how you're walking in this place? And then, you're spending money or experiencing something just absolutely, like, incredible in this place. Like, what's your intention behind it? Right. How are you honoring the people of the land? And all that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Speaking of dirt,
yeah,
let's get into it. I started learning, educating myself, Herbalism 101 during the pandemic because I had such a curiosity about it, and I have so many questions throwing through my head right now. I think for me, the curiosity came from a more extreme place where I already had a pretty solid ground education on psychedelics and plant medicine in that field. Obviously, I think that's, I don't want to say an extreme, but it's a different type of plant medicine. And so I wanted to learn about what are the other aspects of this, because if there are those healing plants and modalities, then what are the other modalities? And as someone who had been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, and as someone who sees the flaws, especially in Western medicine, as being so prescriptive and pharmaceutical, how can we balance and how can we, come back to the earth in that sense and get closer to something that might make more sense for us as animals? Yeah, so that was kind of my little path here. And I wanted to start by sharing something, a powerful statement that's on Bloodroot Apothecary's website, which it'll be linked in the description. At its roots, herbalism is a radical act. It's one of the many ways of abolishing oppressive systems and reclaiming sovereignty of our health, bodies, spirit, and land. Can you expand on that and just share with us what that means to you and what herbalism means to you?
Oh, absolutely. Humans and non-humans, we've been practicing herbalism since forever. It's something that's, widely accessible by nature, and it's inherently ours to work with. And, I feel like in the last few hundred years, we started seeing, a lot of changes in the human world. And a lot of that looked like, medicalization of just regular biological processes.
Mm-hmm.
And, I love modern medicine. I think the technologies that are coming out of it and, have been helping us are so incredible, groundbreaking, just absolutely out of this world. So, I am all for biomedicine, allopathic medicine. However, I start having issues when it's used as a form of social control.
Mm-hmm. Will you elaborate on that for anyone who's not with you on that?
Yeah, for sure. For example, something that we're all familiar with, whether or not we, read the history or experience, current manifestations of these traumas, but the witch hunts of early Europe, healers and a majority were women, were practicing medicine amongst the peasants. And these women, they're helping their community, helping their people, and there was wellness. And basically, long story short, it got to a point where there was so many social uprisings, and the elite upper class were being challenged and threatened. And so the only way for them to maintain dominance and control was to destroy these people who had this knowledge of, medicine, of taking care of their community. And, it's not easy to talk about. We see a lot of that today still. It's an old story.
That's a great example. An unfortunate example, but I think that really can help people grasp what it is that means. I think that we see this too today in the way that herbalism in Western culture, in the States, regards it in the sense of like it's woo-woo, degrades it in that sense. And I think that's just another form of it, of just controlling how people perceive it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately or unfortunately, herbalism is it's so widely accessible. Like, we use it as we cook. Like, in the kitchen, we could go out and buy tea anytime we want. And I mean, it doesn't have to be like the physical properties of plants that we use. Like, plant medicine can go so many different ways. Like, you go and sit under a tree, meditate with the tree, just connect in these different ways. And yeah, I feel like, just putting the label on it as unsafe or, illogical and irrational kind of plants the seed in our minds that, oh yeah, no, we don't go there. We don't access these medicines. But I don't know, I feel like the plants are definitely running the ship at this point. And it's so interesting now, like, so many people are, coming back and having an interest in plant medicine. And I feel like, I don't know, it's so important, it's so needed.
Yeah. How would you define herbalism? What is herbalism?
Oh, yeah. So basically, herbalism is the practice of using plants to aid the body in reaching and maintaining balance and wellness. This includes like the physical, emotional, spiritual aspects of a being. And basically, plant medicine, it creates a space for us to facilitate our own healing. There's no special pill. There's no one herb that's going to cure everything, which is great. Super fun. But it's a reminder that we're responsible for our own healing, and that this process is dependent entirely on you. What goals you set for yourself, the intent behind these goals, and how you use the plants, and working with the herbs and working with an herbalist are just ways to kind of guide you to these places. And I mean, there's so many, like I said, so many different ways. So like with plants, you have like the physical components of extracts, oxymels, like infusions. You could do dried herbal capsules. Of course, teas, plant essences, which is like the energetic imprint of a plant. And with the essences, you, like I said earlier, like you don't have to actually extract the physical constituents of the plant. And other ways you could do that is sitting with the plant, chilling out with it. And then of course, like there's kitchen medicine, all that good stuff.
I love that you described sitting under a tree and meditating with the tree as medicine, because I mean, for me, that's a feeling that I can totally identify with, and I'm sure a lot of people can. But have I ever considered that medicine? No. Am I aware of how it elevates my well-being and how it uplifts me and those dimensions that you were talking about? Absolutely. So I think that's for anyone listening that might not have considered this, there's an example right there of how it's already probably part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like plant medicine and it being this radical act of finding liberation, something as simple as meditating with a tree for medicine, it sounds super out there, but I mean, it's also deconstructing a lot of pre-programmed ideas around medicine, around health and receiving care.
Absolutely. We've talked about this on the podcast previously about food and food being medicine. I mean, again, just to reiterate what you said, it's all about our active role in our health and well-being, on all of those dimensions, emotional and spiritual included, is not a passive thing. Something that I want to highlight is I think that just because one talks of herbalism and a naturalistic way of healing, it doesn't mean that we're going to throw Western medicine out with the bathwater, There's a lot of benefits to it, but I think that a negative to it is the fact that my experience with it and my understanding of it is that it's very after the fact. If there's an injury, then we intervene. If there's an illness, then we intervene. But, I'm curious if you could highlight that difference with herbalism, where it sounds like it's just really about a way of life and a way of incorporating it into our practices for our well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you put all that together. Yeah, I mean, essentially, I feel herbalism is, a form of preventative medicine. And, it does become a lifestyle, because I feel like you get to a point when you're working with the plants where you feel good, you feel connected, and that gets addicting. Yeah. That's real nice. Especially being a modern human, you know what I
mean? Right. Oh my God, I see it, and I can just imagine the feeling.
Yeah, totally. You brought up, using allopathic medicine, as a way, okay, we need to stop this thing now and intervene and treat the symptoms.
Right.
Just kind of surface level stuff instead of, like herbalism getting to the root and preventing. And what comes up for me around that is, also access and, you know what I mean, with, those who practice herbalism, because we basically have no choice. Some of us still do not have access to care, healthcare, mental health care, things like that. And so herbalism does become a way of life for us. And it's important to highlight that, for a lot of people, it's the only option.
Right.
And, there's a lot of safety in that, and also, a lot of ways that it could go in other directions. But, yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that, it's really important, again, to honor for those of us who are like, ooh, what's herbalism? I want to educate myself about that. I think it's really important to, again, hold space and be serious about the origins of it, and also the ways in which people are marginalized to practice it because of the way, again, the state's healthcare system and, lack of affordability in terms of access to healthcare is.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
I love what you said about getting to the root, because what I'm building with Reself and this platform that I'm creating is really all about, again, the way that we take an active role in our healing, our well-being, and our evolution. Surely a mental health aspect, but also the spiritual in it as just simply a dimension of humanity, and bringing that back in again with... So I studied philosophy in college and limited to Western philosophy, and the reason I went into it was because I connected with Buddhism when I was like 12, and I was so blown away with how much I resonated with the philosophy, and took every opportunity I could to educate myself about it up until college. And then I got to college, I studied philosophy, and I was like, where are all the other perspectives? Where is, the spiritual wisdom here? And so, with Reself, it's really about bridging Western and Eastern, all different philosophies, finding that, perennial philosophy, those common grounds. Honoring all different philosophies from all over the world as having something to teach us. Merging and marrying them with science, with psychology, with neuroscience, and highlighting those practices that we can all do to support all of those elements as getting to the root and, those preventative and holistic ways of supporting ourselves. So yeah, completely aligned with that. Getting to the root is my slogan. It's so important.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, get to the root. Hang out with roots.
Literally, that's what I thought about.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God, thank you.
Yeah. So on the subject, because we already talked about this, if anyone listening has any sort of skepticism to just not quite understanding something that I learned a few years ago in one of my environmentalism classes, which I think really planted that seed of curiosity in me, was that the key ingredient in aspirin is from plants. So I thought that was something that I wanted to highlight for anyone that's, not quite on board yet. Because other than chemicals that we create, I mean, Life 101, everything comes from the earth and it comes from plants. So what you're really doing here is you're getting at the source.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the molecular level of a lot of these pharmaceuticals that we take on the reg, these are man-made constituents, but we get the blueprint from plants, and we get the blueprints from nature. And that's essentially the root of modern medicine.
There it is.
Yep.
How did you get into herbalism? And, I'm just curious. I love hearing people's stories, and I wonder if you would grace us with your story and journey to where you are today.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity to. I don't know, I was thinking about this earlier. I'm like, how did I get here? Like, what just happened? How did I get here? So, like, with that, I don't really know. Like, there was no aha moment. Like, I want to get herbalist, practice herbalism.
Right.
I feel like I just kind of oozed into it in a sense. I've always had a curiosity for the natural world, for medicine, and for just the plants and beings around me. I don't know, as far as I can remember.
Right.
As a kid, I have really good memories of cultivating relationships with plants that are nearby. And I mean, that looked like cooking ancestral foods, like with my family, with my mom, my aunties, my grandma, making lei. And then also, ceremonies such as graduation, blessings, or family gatherings, which I feel like, like working with plants, it's a really big part of the culture here. And just how we, connect with the land and steward the land. Yeah, I've always had an interest in plants and various forms of medicine. And I think that stemmed from being a really, really ill child growing up. My family it was just standard American diet. Microbiome was totally shot at like a young age, and I was always sick. And my parents, I remember them getting to a point they were so frustrated, and we'd be going to the doctor so often, and my dad just he's like, nope, none of this, we're done. And I mean, for them, they're just so hardworking. They made the switch from insured allopathic care to naturopathic care, which was a really big jump for them. I mean, they're just regular old folks, and I think it totally changed their perspective of reality and health and healing too. And so I was really privileged to be able to work with naturopaths, chiropractors, and various practitioners of alternative medicine at a young age, so I was exposed to that really. And that has always kind of stuck with me, which I'm really grateful for. But yeah, as far as, actually utilizing plants and herbs to support others in their healing process, I would say for me it started about 10 years ago. I used to care for and train horses. I'm a total pony princess. I am obsessed. Not many people know this about me, but
oh my god, I love it.
Yeah. And so, cultivating the relationship with the horses and my role with them at the time, I would always end up the ones who were labeled crazy, traumatized, damaged, just kind of thrown away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you know stuff, you're really cool, you're super talented, and you're cute. There's got to be more. And like, you're not having fun. Like, I know you could have fun.
Right.
So I was able to use herbs with these animals and facilitate, safe, trusting spaces for them to work through their traumas, however that looked like, and, utilizing the plants and plant medicine through that. In that space, I utilized a lot of flower essences because they're so sensitive and really responsive. And then, with more physical ailments, such as ulcers or wounding, skin issues, then I used to use like the physical constituents of the plants.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then like through, herbs and, the greater team that goes into taking care of horses, such as farrier, body worker, vets, stuff like that. It's not just solely on one person or one practice. It's an accumulation of so many things. Oh my God. But yeah, we started just seeing like these really groundbreaking results with these like thrown away horses, and that definitely ignited a lot of things within me, like as far as, creating the space for others to heal and utilizing the plants in that space too. And so that kind of inspired me to go to university. I went to university at a later age. I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing, even though I had no idea what I was doing.
Do we all?
Yeah, I was totally winging it. And so I was inspired to, pursue medicine, studying medicine. And so as I began studying pre-medicine, I simultaneously began studying, or like self-studying, plant medicine and herbalism intended for humans. And it just kind of snowballed from there. Totally just flashed past all the things.
Wow. First of all, I think obviously at the time, right? And I think all of us can relate to with adversity in our lives. It's hard to see it at the time, but how beautiful that led you to where you are. And I can relate to that in my own life, in my own way. And I think it's really beautiful when we transform pain in one way or another into a path. And how lucky those horses were to have you and the people that held space for them, because I feel like that's certainly not the case in some of those situations. I grew up in an area where racing horses and doing that whole thing is a thing in Connecticut. Those horses can be very mistreated and just seen as one thing, profit. And that's very traumatizing for, any animal in any situation like that. That's so beautiful that you were a part of not giving up on something or someone that otherwise could have been discarded.
Yeah, thank you for that. Working with animals, just in general, they're mirrors for us. Anyone who you interact with is a mirror, but, that animals definitely amplify that because they don't have the ability to speak in words that we understand, how you and I are doing it right now. And so it definitely, working with them activates a lot more your senses. And just what comes to mind right now is just, the horses, that's just one example of how to work, amongst a team, how to hold space for others and, utilize the tools that you have available. And that translates into the human world too. A lot of what I see when I work with others in that sort of space is, an exact mirror image of when I work with the horses. Creating trusting, safe spaces to come and do your thing.
Yeah. So important. I love that you highlighted that. Not just other people, but animals also are a mirror for us. And as you said that, I thought about how my dog has done that for me. And the ways in which, I mean, after childhood, after trauma, you know, all that jazz, I learned just how, I mean, in a positive sense, how attuned I could be to someone's needs and my own, but in a more, you know, learning sense, how I wasn't, and how I still had stuff to work on within myself to be able to, obviously, again, take care of his needs, but how was I still not honoring my needs or holding enough space and stillness and presence to hear and feel what he's communicating to me, and again, vice versa within myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like our animal can, you know, they're such, I don't know who's helping who heal the most anymore. Here we are, you know, creating such a fuss out of trying to help them, but then really, like, here we are just totally, like, in our own tense little bodies themselves and kind of wallowing in our own traumas. But yeah, they definitely, you know, reflect back just not only what we need to fix, heal, whatever you want to call it, but also like what's happening right now. And as well as just go and enjoy life. Go away. Like,
right.
It doesn't have to always be about fixing, healing stuff. Like, just go play, go enjoy, like, have fun. Don't hurt nobody, but go have fun.
Right. Let go, flow, trust. Yep.
It's safe, you're good.
Yes. Yes. I would love to hear about what you kind of explained your current studies and lens of exploration with. Is on the Bloodroot Apothecary website, you said that you're, you know, currently exploring the sociological, historical, and political implications of health and healing within the cultural context of your home, Hawaii. I want to hear what is, you know, I know it's not simple at all, but I would love to hear about what that intersection and those implications are, and what your current lens and exploration has yielded for your understanding.
Absolutely. And I mean, it is so, you know, complex and ever-changing, but at the same time, it's so simple, which just totally racks my mind. Basically, when I was going into this degree program, first of all, it was, you know, one of the ones that I actually had access to, that I could utilize these skills in the direction that I wanted to go in with a vocation. And so I basically was able to design this program around medicine. And, you know, as I was doing like the hard sciences and maths and stuff with medicine, I saw in a lot of, you know, myself and a lot of my peers who were going through the pre-med journey that, you know, here's these like super nerds who are really good at, you know, science and math, STEM, all those things. But also there's, I don't know, there was a lot of puzzle pieces missing. I felt, and, you know, as I worked with physicians, like I worked in the ER for a little bit too, I saw that a lot of them did have, you know, a lot of heart and were really mindful of their practice. However, there was just so many things missing in that space that was intended for healing, which I needed to investigate more of. So I basically designed, you know, my major around herbalism.
Amazing. It's incredible that you were able to do that, because, you know, I could imagine, depending on the university, that might not even be possible, again, here in the West, in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it was one of the things where I know I was just kind of greedy with it. And, you know, I had so many options, and I had the privilege of having the options of being able to study, you know, these really incredible things and obtain these skills. but I was like, okay, where's my interest going?
Right.
Like, where's that going? And I got really real with myself. But yeah, and that kind of led me towards, studying the sociological, historical, political implications of how we in Hawaii either do or do not have access to health and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot. It's definitely, the information is dense, but also it strikes a lot of chords and a lot of nerves within me, just as someone whose family has been here for, a little while, who's experienced a lot of harm and injustices firsthand.
Right.
And, or have experienced the consequences of these systemic legacies that are in place,
mm-hmm.
whose intentions are not entirely good.
Right.
So it's still a learning process for me when I'm in that learning space.
Mm.
And I feel like, for me, it's important to understand the blueprint to an extent,
mm-hmm.
to where, I look at it objectively instead of, reabsorbing it and reliving it. You gotta be real careful with that.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging. Like, I have gone through so many anti-anxiety nerving herbs.
I'm sure.
Throughout this, and oh my god, it's amazing. But yeah, so I don't know. I go back and forth with all of this often, and I feel like, understanding the blueprint of, how the majority of us are operating on this certain level, and also the why. Just kind of, I don't know, it reveals the baby steps of, how to create the spaces that we want to see, create the lives that we want to live, and, how do we find liberation and freedom and wellness and all of these things, in the context of our modern world, just what is happening now. So
yeah,
that's my thoughts for today. I'm going to change tomorrow, who knows?
It's an evolution. Wow. I mean, first of all, I can totally imagine. I mean, that sort of separation, like you said, that is required to not reabsorb as you reprocess. But also, I mean, it's beautiful that it reveals a path forward to you. Does it feel like when you study it and when, again, as the path reveals itself in that sense, is it empowering? What is that process like for you?
Oh boy, it's really interesting. I feel like, a lot of this information that I receive about the past, the histories, and, how all the things lead up to the things and all that. If I'm really intentful and careful with myself, I find it as a form of healing. And to go a little deeper, it's, ancestral healing too.
Right.
Yeah. The process for me in terms of ancestral healing with all of this, it definitely brings up a lot of emotions, a lot of really uncomfortable emotions too. But, it's opportunities to work with them and to be able to hold space for yourself to work with them. And it's a lot, and, it's okay. And, utilizing the tools that you have, the plants that are near you and in your community. But it does tend to surface up a lot of really uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
But also in that, it's an opportunity to let it go. And when these things come up, it wants to be worked with, it wants to be acknowledged, whether it's you or somebody else who is of you.
Right.
And, it's getting to the root.
Yeah.
And, after the processing and, metabolizing all of these things, I always come out feeling extremely energized and very motivated and inspired. And that feels really nice.
That's beautiful. Yeah. It's so important. It's something that I absolutely hold space for, and with Reself, it's something that, again, we absolutely incorporate in what we're creating, because I think some of us can feel like we have been presented the opportunity to heal our ancestral trauma and heal our intergenerational trauma. And I say opportunity because at the same time, it can feel like a huge burden. And again, that reprocessing, that reliving, that is so difficult. But, you know, what you just shared is so inspiring for any of us that feel like they're doing that work, or that work is the path in front of them, because it really, everything gets passed along until it stops with someone. And that's the beautiful opportunity we can each have, and that is what makes a difference in the world and makes the world a better place. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you to the plants for helping us keep our shit together.
Speaking again of the plants, could you talk about Bloodroot Apothecary and tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Bloodroot Apothecary, oh God, it's, fairly new. I started publicly sharing some of these offerings. When was it? It was before the pandemic, but not too much before. That time was so weird.
Yeah.
And, I started as just like kind of an herb and art project. And I called it, what did I call it? I called it Blast and Ritual. And, that was kind of a little space for me to just kind of cultivate this creative fire that I had lost along the way, and to get back in touch with the plants and natural world and with my local community. And so I did that for a minute, and did that through the beginning of the pandemic, and started seeing, there's a need for this, like in my community, for these offerings and stuff, and just kind of, tweaking my mindset around that, and eventually came up with the Bloodroot Apothecary later of 2020. Yeah, and still just creating the foundation, the detail work of it, but basically it's a container for what the plants have to offer us. And I intently focus on community herbalism, providing access to quality care for those of us who may not have access to these things. And currently through it, I offer a small product line of bioregionally available and safely cultivated and achieved plants, as well as some plants who I try to source as ethically as I can from the mainland.
Right.
And then I also offer consultations to people in my local community. It's kind of the capacity I have as of yet. But yeah, my practice with all that is focus on local community, both human and non-human kin. And, that includes everyone, humans, the critters, the water, the land, ancestors, those who we kind of forgot how to see. And, that's just kind of, the way it's moving right now, and it's super fun. It's so interesting, like starting a business and, kicking off a project. You have all these plants and, selling your intentions and whatever, and then you get to the place and it's like, yeah, you thought you gotta go over here. You need to do this there. And it's like, okay, I'm down.
Right. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, I bet. I'm really touched by how community-based what you're doing is, because that's not necessarily the capitalistic path, so to speak. And I think that, again, just as you said, like, it's a radical way to oppose an oppressive system. And it's a really meaningful way to touch and help people and strengthen community. Yeah, thank you. I feel that also applies to things that you're building and what you're doing too.
Shucks.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, community for us in Hawaii, that's Ohana, it's family.
Mm-hmm.
And without our community, we would be nothing, we would be nobody. And, community has definitely come through a lot stronger. Like, we were already pretty solid before the pandemic, but through all of it, and as we continue on through it, the community is, a form of insurance for us. And so really focusing on that has, directed not only my practice and my studies, but also, revealing a lot of how do I want to show up and who do I want to show up for, who do I have the capacity to show up for. So, I mean, it's all this great trippery learning process. That is of being human.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. And I think it's really beautiful to witness for anyone who doesn't feel like they have community and doesn't feel like they fit anywhere, because I think the magic of the internet, right? I'm a big internet hater. I'm building an internet company, but I'm a big internet hater. Just the way that it's used currently, because I think that it's really easy to see the potential that we can do great things with it. It's catch-22 like everything, right? And one of the beautiful things is that it can really bring people together who otherwise wouldn't have met, like us having this conversation right now. And that's beautiful and incredible. And we can use things like this to build and foster community and meaningful connection beyond the screen as well. For me, that's the most important part, is I consider reself, and otherwise what we're living on a screen. And there's so much, and I think a lot of people realize this. I certainly was reminded of, even for my yoga practice, right? Not doing yoga physically together in a space with other people with the same intentions, with the same, it's just completely different. And to me, it loses a really incredibly important element. It's ineffable in a sense, but what happens when we get together, when we sit under a tree and meditate, what happens in the physical, philosophically speaking, is so important. I don't think it's talked about enough, but we can't do without it.
Yeah, especially like where we are now. It would be absolutely wonderful just to get off the internet and
right.
Through screens. This is seriously a dream of mine, just to have a landline and a fax machine and go. But the fact is, it's not going away. Screens are not going away. But like you said, it's how do you use this with intent? How do you use these methods of communication as a tool to recreate reality? To allow us, the opportunities to gather and be together. Yeah, and I love it. Grasping about it. It's like, okay, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. This is my last question. What do you see the role and future role of herbalism in both personal and societal well-being?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, I feel like, plants are definitely driving the ship at this point. Whether we know it or not, whether we want to or not. And we're currently seeing a lot of people, like we talked about earlier, with, this really intense new inspiration and interest about herbalism or just working with the plants in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I feel like, we should definitely nourish that. And, realize that, yes, we are. I definitely see us, getting to a point where we're consciously working with plants and the natural world around us more so.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us are already, but, and, we never know, we might get to a point where we have to heavily rely on herbs and alternative medicines. Mm-hmm. A lot of, my teachers say the same thing. If you have an interest in these things, go for it. Mm-hmm. Do it. Mm-hmm. We need you. Mm-hmm. It's not just a passing, fleeting thought. Like, we seriously need you here on the ground doing this work. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's okay. Don't feel guilty for, like, denying it or not denying it. But, yeah, and, I feel like both on a personal and societal level, like, the plants are going to continue to hold us in this, unwinding and in this reshaping of our world and recreating it. Just gently holding the space for us to come back to ourselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. As you're talking, it reminded me of, so part of what I thought was my path was going to get my PhD in philosophy. For me, something that I came across was this stark, it's not like a resistance, but this contrast between my interests in philosophy, in bridging the East and the West, and all of that there were very limited opportunities for me, especially in the States, with programs to find someone that could support me. And as I dabbled in this and tried to kind of, is resell really my path? I thought I was going to get a PhD. And I wrote and worked on my writing sample, which was a critique of how Kant, an epitome and perhaps you could say figure of Western philosophy, talks about nature in, I'm pretty sure it's the Critique of Judgment. He talks about nature's purposiveness, which is basically a fancy way of saying like the purpose of nature. And it's really super anthropocentric, for anyone who doesn't know what that word means, human-centered. And as I sat with this, and after I put that paper down as I was working on it, I asked myself, is this, obviously, it's not Kant's fault, but is this thinking part of what has led us to this huge imbalanced relationship with nature, to our ecological climate, to profit over balance and health and honoring that system and honoring, like we talked about, those ineffable spiritual energetic benefits to communing with nature and absorbing the wisdom that billions of years of evolution hold within a singular planet. And I just couldn't help but feel like that was a huge thing to ponder about where we've reached in the world. And I think that, exactly like you said before, it's just so important, and it's just so, I believe, essential for us to reconsider our relationship with nature. And it starts with a new philosophy of nature, of rewriting nature's purposiveness, because philosophy is the foundation on top of which all else is built and operates, whether we act like it or not. Philosophy also looks at how we act and what do we have to say about these observations. So I think it's philosophy's responsibility to play an active role in redefining the essential role of our interconnectedness, utilizing wisdom and perspectives from all over the world, the East, the West, indigenous peoples who have a completely different, more connected relationship with nature, etc. We can't just keep rereading the same people. We have to reread these people like I believe my reading of Kant, and look at it and say, how has this informed the world we live in today? What role does this philosophy play in the world I'm seeing around me? And what needs to change and evolve in this thinking to address where we are today? I think that's how we use older philosophies. That's how we keep them relevant. That's how we rewrite them. But I digress. I mean, pre the epitome of the environmental crisis, I think I felt like this as a child, right? Like we have, I think as children, special for anyone who is privileged enough to have access to nature, a special relationship with it. And depending on whether our communities or our environments hold space for that or not, we might lose touch with it. But it's so important to reconsider what knowledge we value, what influences our thinking, and what can reestablish that balance. And like you said, I think if I'm summarizing, right, herbalism is a huge part of that rebalancing.
That was great.
I needed to get it out, you know?
Yes. Yeah, oh my God, absolutely. And I mean, like, what comes to mind is, we could study and ponder these things and, go over and over again. And, we're careful not to absorb and recreate it. I just love, the simplicity that the practice of herbalism offers. It's just so, like, I don't know, it's so simple.
Right.
And it's like, hey, get back to this. The simplicity. Remember who you are and what you are. So, yeah, I don't know, just the word simplicity comes to mind.
I love that. That's like, as you said before, being with the plants and what it just does with you, for you, to just be in that presence. And, right, like, it's simple in that sense. I listened to this podcast called Hardcore Literature, and the guy who does it, he talks about, like, his time at Oxford, and I love how he talks about how they used to talk, and he calls it mental masturbation. Just all in the head, doing nothing with anything. And that's also how I felt about my study of philosophy. And that's also what really has directed Reself. Because in my own life, like as I went to class, I was going to class to learn and whatever, finish my degree. But I was like, what am I learning today that I can apply to my life and help me live a better life? Like, what can I take from this and put into action? And, as you just said, it's that simple. It's as simple as communing with nature, communing with plants, communing with herbs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's as simple as, sometimes you just gotta shut up. Take a back seat, like, chill out.
Yeah.
A lot of the formulations that I make for others, like, you could go through, is the art of formulation. It's so fun. I love that book so much. But, you could get to these really intense, lists of plants, herbs in a formulation for a person. But, what really gets into the places that are really hard to reach and are, these formulas that are so simple. Just like 1 to 2, 3 ingredients, plants, essences, whatever, and, taking at low doses, like, I don't know, you usually see profound change in results through the simpler things.
Yeah. Okay, I have 2 questions that come to mind. First, the formulation process just sounds so fun. For me, I really like creating a perfume. Like, what are those things you're gonna put into it? What's your process when you think about it? What are you weighing when you're thinking about what you're gonna formulate for someone?
Yeah, I guess the framework of my process looks a little bit like, at first I let the logical mind take control, and, you find what's the common complaint of this person or animal, and then, of course, finding the plants that are helpful in that situation based on their physical actions and constituents and stuff like that. And then, you have to consider contraindications. So safety, are they taking medication? What's their constitution? Are they hot, cold? How do these herbs kind of play a role in that whole party? And then once the logical brain, does its thing, and sometimes it'll have its tantrums and, want to go down certain rabbit holes. When I feel okay with all of that, I'll let, the more intuitive part come out. And that's where the fun happens. Just, paying attention to what plants come up. Like when you're in a conversation with this person, also when you are, thinking about them, thinking about their situation, just what plants come up. And it could be, something totally out there, and, just jot it down. You never know.
Right.
Now or in the future. Yeah, so formulation, for me, it's such a great balance of, work and play, and coming from a place of compassion, empathy as well, and, intent for whoever the formula is intended for. So yeah, and then, in that space, and this part looks different for everyone. I mean, we have our rituals when we go into the space, and, that's entirely up to you. And that looks like however it looks for you and, the plants and your ancestors too. So, often we find ourselves doing the things that our ancestors totally vibe with, which is, well, at first it's like, oh my God, what, where did that come from? But
right.
After a while, it's like, oh, okay, you make sense of it, and then it's all good.
I love that you said the work and play. That's the dream.
Yeah, exactly. And I found some of it in formulation. Who would have thought?
Amazing. My last question is just, what can we do? What can anyone do who's interested in practicing and in incorporating plants and herbs? I mean, I know that you mentioned cooking, and, for me, an example of that would be like my Italian ancestry, like herbs, looking at those herbs as what is part of my roots.
Yes.
For me, that's like one of the ways that I've looked at this in my own life. What else? I know, like you said, there's so many different ways and types of medicines that you can use, and yeah, enlighten us.
Okay,
please.
Oh gosh. Wow. Pressure's on. No. Yeah, I mean, I would say first step is just to please just do it. And just do it. Take the leap, take the step, take the crawl, whatever it looks like for you, just do it. And, see where it goes from there. And, when you get to a place where you're like, I don't know where to go. Just call it in, get freaky, talk to the plants and be like, yo, what do I do? And, be curious and allow yourself to be curious with this. I find, when I am talking with people who are interested, or, even in the space of teaching, a lot of people don't allow themselves to be curious. And, there's that big block, and it's like, no, you have to remind yourselves that this is for us, this is us. And we have a right to these practices, and we have a right to know these practices, and it's okay. It's totally safe. And, you just gotta do it. I feel like some avenues is to explore. your own roots, your own ancestry. And like you said, like start with the foods and research about the herbs, why it was used in the cooking, like is it available, or are there deeper meanings to it? There's a lot of stories and symbolism in the plants that are used for cooking, and tap into that, as well as the space that you're into, the land that you occupy. Like explore the plants that are used in the land that you're on, and how the people of the land that you're on have worked with the plants and the relationship with them too. But yeah, start small. It's not rocket science. This place is super awesome. You're gonna run into some blocks, some opportunities to heal.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, but just keep moving forward, and whatever that looks like. I mean, it's the whole process, the whole learning process of herbalism, of practicing herbalism, of receiving herbalism. Like healing is so non-linear, and that's totally okay. Just do what you got to do for yourself, and first be mindful. Don't perpetuate harm on you or others or the plants, but at the same time, just go do it. Go explore.
Love it.
Yay.
Love it. A great end note. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
At the moment, no. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For this conversation.
Thank you.
Super fun, and what you're doing, I think, is fantastic, and I know it could be so weird to make that step, especially with the uncertainty and challenges that are just abound. But thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. That is it for our conversation with Caitlin. I hope everybody enjoyed and felt so nourished by this conversation as I did. You know the drill. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, whatever floats your boat. Make sure you're signed up for the pre-launch mindset preview announcements, which you will get if you are subscribed to our wait list. The link is in the description. Have a great week. Go commune with some plants. Bye, everybody.